Hello, everyone. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. If you are comfortable, would love to see where everybody's coming from. If you want to drop it in the chat, and we're really excited to get started here. So we'll keep watching these numbers coming in, and look forward to hearing where you're from.
I think we have like every time zone covered super quick. Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah, like the first five, it was like, okay, here's the corners of the U.S. I was just in Baltimore.
Tuscaloosa.
I see you, Philly.
Okay, well, I'll call out our Midwesterners. Hi, Hoosiers.
John, I love the very specific, not Boston. That's
Awesome.
awesome. Kankakee. Look, I can pronounce that city in Illinois.
I'm proud of you for trying, though, Trent.
No, that's how you say it.
No, I know, but it was a journey to get there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a good crew here, so I think we'll kick things off. Appreciate everyone's energy. Please keep in the comments coming. We'll take praise, applause, whatever you want to send us throughout the webinar. But thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled to present our Next Gen Learner report to you all today and some of our key findings. Before we jump in, we do have a couple housekeeping notes for you all. First and foremost, the most critical question. Yes, we will send you the recording. Please feel free to share with your colleagues. We'll also send you the slides if there are pieces that you want to share internally or use for your own benefit. If you do have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring that chat, and then we'll have a section at the end of this where we'll go through and answer as many as we possibly can while we're here today. And then for this last piece, closed captions are available. The icon to enable them is in the control panel at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you run into any issues with any of the tech elements of this, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and our team will assist. So we'll kick off with some introductions. I'll get us started here, and then we'll go down the line with some of my amazing colleagues here. My name's Jamie Oleksic. I'm sure I've met a couple of you on the road, but for those that I haven't, it's very nice to meet you. I'm our SVP of Go-to-Market Strategy here at Carnegie. Truly a special projects kind of role, but I've been here for over 11 years, and I've just loved the evolution of the work that we're doing in higher ed. And I thought I'd start, since we're talking about student motivations and college decision-making process, thought I'd kick it off with why I chose the institution that I went to. I actually very distinctly only went to institutions that I knew nobody else from my high school was going to, because I wanted a new adventure and a new identity, and just to be open to new opportunities. And so while what I thought was strictly a decision based on campus feel for many years, I really think it was just based on the opportunities that the campus provided, and just I could do whatever I wanted. So really a special time. But with that, I'll kick it over to Trent.
Good day, everyone, because I know it's morning for some of you and afternoon for others. I'm Trent Gilbert. I'm Carnegie's Vice President of Enrollment and Marketing Solutions. I currently reside in Birmingham, Alabama, and just excited to get a chance to connect with many of y'all today via this webinar, and on the road into the future. So one of the things, I was originally grew up in South Florida, and so when I chose to go to school in North Carolina, I was going 14 and a half hours away from home. But I remember when I found my institution that I was enrolling in. I have two older sisters, and they both went to school in North Carolina. And so I was the smart aleck. Surprise, surprise. For those of you all that know me, I was the smart aleck to my parents. And I said, I'm going to go to school in North Carolina because both my sisters went to school on the 4085 corridor. And I chose a school literally right between the two of them. None of us were there at the same time, bless my parents, for private school tuition and assisting with that. But, so that's how I actually found a school 14 and a half hours away from home. Was really at a college fair, and I saw the banner that said North Carolina, and I was being a smart aleck. So I will hand things over to my esteemed colleague, Megan.
Thanks, Trent. Hi, everyone. So good to be with you here today. My name is Megan Robinson. I'm Carnegie's Executive Vice President of Enrollment Services. In my current role, I oversee our enrollment strategy team, both on ground and online, our enrollment data and analytics team, which includes our financial aid optimization and all of our slate reporting and benchmarking, and our enrollment tech and services team, which includes all of our slate work, as well as our contact center. I'm currently based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I'm actually from Indiana, hence my shout out to the Hoosiers. And I chose the institution I attended in Southern Indiana because I went on campus and they let me shadow a class. And in the class, the professor asked a question and no one else raised their hand to answer. And when I did, she called on me and I had a full conversation with her in that class as a senior in high school. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So I wanted to go to a place where I could participate and be known. And so a small school in Southern Indiana was meant for me. Over to Joe.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. Joe Masters, Senior Vice President of Brand Management, which means that I'm a brand strategist and brand builder, but I like to stay on through the creative and make sure that brands come to life through activation. Now, you brought up Pittsburgh, Megan, so I won't say the school, but I was a transfer student and I transferred to a school in Pittsburgh because I, at the time, was a fiction major and my favorite writer ran the writing program there. Back to you, Jamie.
Awesome. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a teaser in terms of what this research is all about and how we thought about this work. So we've been doing research about student decision making and motivations for many, many years, but we really wanted to embark on going one layer deeper, not only as to why students are making the decisions that they're making, what's driving that, but also why does that matter to them, to give us more insight on how do we action on that in the work that we're doing. So we sought out and surveyed 3,300 teens ages 13 to 18 to understand this decision-making process. One of the things that was really interesting is that the responses were actually pretty split in terms of school students that were not interested in attending college and the ones that were. And so we'll actually be releasing a second study of that 51% that said they were not interested in attending college at a later date. Feel free to scan that QR code. We'll make sure to get that to you. But today we're focusing on the 49% that said they were interested to really understand the impetus for that interest and why that matters to them. So if you hit to that next slide, one of the top line features of this research that was really apparent is that there's a new layer of decision making for these prospective students, and it comes down to feasibility. Back in our generation, I think I can speak for my colleagues here, it really was where you were going to attend was the first question you were asking, and now students are having the conversation around, is it feasible for me to attend college, and how is college going to impact my life and work for me and my schedule, in my financial situation, in where I am in my stage of life. So that was one thing that we truly wanted to dig into with this research, and you'll see that as kind of a common through line in a lot of the decisions that students were making. In order for us to really dig into this, we looked at our past research over the last 6-7 years to prospective high school students and pulled out the common trends that we were seeing across all of that research. In many of our studies, we would ask questions around what's the most important factor when you're deciding which institution to attend or what's most important to you. And these are the things that would always rise to the top: academics, campus feel, financial consideration, institutional brand, reputation, and then kind of a bundle of other selections. And so this is really where we built our question set, was kind of a distilled, deeper version of all of these different areas to understand a little bit more about the human behind the survey takers and how we can impact decisions around factors such as these. And so there were 6 key findings in this study, and this will be kind of our roadmap for the presentation today. First and foremost, the ability to afford college outweighs ROI, and that became really apparent with some of the results from the prospective students taking this survey. Campus feel and belonging is still very much a deciding factor, and there's even more depth to that than I think we even realized a decade ago when we were thinking about student experience on campus. Flexibility and real-world readiness matter most in their decision-making process. Brand authenticity and transparency shape trust. And so how do we do that? And how do we make that connectedness in the work that we're doing? It's very clear that students want marketing that understands them at a deeper level and responds to that in a smart way. And one of the things that I feel like we continue to say, but the landscape of this continues to evolve, is the funnel is no longer linear. There are a lot of factors that impact the decision that these students make in the channels they engage with. So with that, I'll kick it over to Megan to get us started.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you opening us up. As Jamie said, one of the most interesting findings in the report was tied to students' perspectives on cost. And so, to be clear, it's not a surprise that cost was a leading factor, but I was surprised to learn that the majority of students said the ability to afford college, like truly pay for the day-to-day associated with being in college, outweighed the need to prove that students will see a return on their investment associated with obtaining a college degree. And that was surprising to me because, to be candid, I don't think I thought college-going age students were thinking about affordability at this age. I know I wasn't. And that's the first thing that's changed about our next gen learner. They're clearly thinking about this. Over 60% of our respondents told us so. And this goes back to what we were saying about feasibility. They're more worried about how this can work for them right now rather than what it might lead to someday. And that's not to say that they don't care about outcomes or the traditional definitions of ROI. We'll talk about that in a later section. But the outcomes almost don't matter if they can't afford to make it work in the first place. And so looking at what this goes into for students, when we ask that one layer deeper question about what financial considerations matter most to them, you'll see here what I was referring to. Cost of living ranked significantly higher than any other factor. Again, the more we think about the moment in which these students are making these decisions, this makes sense. Economic factors and cost of living are important to us all, so it's no surprise that this is a filter through which they're making their decisions as well. Another call out here is that you'll see some of the usual suspects on the list to show that scholarships and other opportunities to pay still matter. But what's most notable on the rest of the list, though, is that sticker price of tuition is actually at the bottom. That's typically what I think we mean when we say that students care about cost. But this is just another example of how they're redefining what that means. And it also tells us there's an opportunity to think about how we communicate costs in gaining a college education. And so what do we do with this first takeaway? Make the full cost clear. Go beyond tuition and directly address the total cost of attendance, including housing, food, transportation, books, fees, personal expenses. Demonstrate it visually using tables, charts, examples. Tell student stories to make the full picture easier to understand. Show students how affordability actually comes together. Help students see how scholarships, grants, loans, work study, family contribution, outside aid, payment plans, all of that can combine to make college financially feasible for them. The goal is to help them understand that higher education as a whole can financially be within reach. Reduce ambiguity through this transparency. Do not bury the cost information or assume that students understand those pieces. Explain the terms, work study, net price, indirect cost, aid packages. Use plain language to tell them what these things are. What is work study? How many students receive it? What do students do to earn it? How much can they realistically expect? Answer those questions directly, and in doing so, you'll naturally use transparency as a trust builder. Clear upfront cost communication becomes part of their brand experience with you. And when students and families see that you're honest about cost early, they're more likely to associate your institution with trust, clarity, and support. And doing all of this as early as possible in the process is important. Confusion around costs is often an optics problem, not a true affordability problem. By explaining cost and affordability options early, you can reduce that fear, show feasibility, and build confidence before students rule themselves out. And as I wrap up our first takeaway, I realized that what stands out to me the most about this one is that this affordability concept was always part of the conversation, but it was after some of those other items came into play: academic programs, campus feel, brand trust. Before, students were making their shortlist based on those factors, and then they would decide if they could actually afford it. But now they need confidence to know they can afford it before they even think about starting their list, before they can explore those other pieces. And speaking of those other pieces, I'm going to turn it to Trent, Carnegie's resident campus vibes expert.
Thanks, Megan. I like that title, Campus Vibes Expert. I'm gonna
I
change my
gotcha.
title. Just a quick reminder: if you have questions, feel free to just jump down at the bottom of the Zoom window in the Q&A box, and you can drop those questions there. Our team is monitoring those, and we'll have some time to address those as we get near the end of the presentation. But one of the things as we kind of dive into this, and this is something that I think has continued to be at the forefront of our minds as enrollment and marketing professionals, has really been this feeling of campus feel. And really, we brought it down to this term because the students gave us this term of vibe. I think back on my career, my 23 some odd year career, and I think about the conversations I've had with students along the way. And if you ask a room full of students, how many of you all chose this school because it just felt right? 98% of those students will raise their hand. And it's this feeling. And it's really this moment that a student has when they feel this is the place for them. And so I think that oftentimes as marketers, as enrollment people, we spend a lot of time trying to create this manicured, like what does our institution look like? But we have to really be authentic to who we are as an institution because inevitably students want to make purchasing decisions based on a reflection they see in the mirror. Students are walking around their campus, they're looking at your view books, they're looking at your marketing material, and they're really asking themselves three, all right, maybe four questions. Can I live with these people? Can I be friends with these people? And can I date these people? Now, the faculty will want me to add, can I go to class with these people, right? That's inevitably what we're talking about is this moment of like, do I feel the vibe of this place, right? 26% said the campus feel is the most important factor for them when choosing a college. I go back to stories of, my wife chose to go to school where she chose to go to school because she visited in the winter and there was snow on the ground and the students were in flip-flops. That's a vibe factor. I go back to when I was vice president for enrollment at a school in the Midwest, and we were recruiting students from all over the Midwest and really trying to get inroads at this one high school in Chicago. And their top valedictorian was visiting campus, and she visited campus, had a great visit. And I was like, I really hope we're going to get this student. And she wound up enrolling, which was a really exciting moment. And I remember she was like 3 weeks into school, and I saw her on campus, and I was like, hey, I know you had a lot of choices. You were highly recruited by a lot of places. Why did you choose to come here? And she said, honestly, there was bendy straws in the dining hall. Right. So that's not something that any of us inevitably can control. That's not a moment that any of us can manufacture, but it truly is this moment of it's how a campus feel has that emotional connection, that social connection, and also that practical connection along the way. The students told us this very, very clearly. A great quote from one of the students that I do want to read to you is, to me, campus feel means the overall atmosphere and vibe of a college, how welcoming, friendly, and inclusive it feels, how students interact, and whether I can see myself feeling comfortable and motivated there. Really, when I think about this, is this moment of like students are looking for this inevitable moment where through some alchemy of atmosphere, setting, or vibe, they realize that this is the place for them. And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to create, and we have to do it in an authentic way in our marketing messaging, in our in-person experience, all the way through during this process. But when we really dive into like what are those things that are important to them, I thought this was really interesting. And the top two are probably going to come as no surprise to us, right? This moment of campus safety. And so we were unpacking campus safety a little bit with some of the participants and then also internally. And I think oftentimes one of the things that all of us go to is like, oh, campus is safe. We have, campus police, and we have, safe rides, and we have, blue light phones, or some of y'all are getting rid of blue light phones. Like we have all these things that makes campus physically safe. And that is an important component. I think the second part of campus safety that's important is the mental component. I'm going to be cared for and taken care of while I'm here mentally, in my mental health. But really, the third aspect of campus safety is this a safe environment where I can come and I can challenge my ideas. I can debate what I feel like is correct. Is it a safe environment to have those intellectual conversations and really push my boundaries? So when I think about campus safety, I know oftentimes we go to physical campus safety, especially in 2026. But it's also think about mental safety, but it's also think about creating that safe environment. The second one is cleanliness, right? I mean, students and their parents, if you can't take care of your campus, how are you going to take care of me? How are you going to take care of my precious daughter or son, Caitlin? Right? There's this moment of we have to ensure that our campus is reflective of who we are. So this is a moment where I encourage everyone on, twice a year at the very minimum to take a walk around your campus, walk your campus like you're a visitor, walk with fresh eyes, bring your facilities, bring your CFO person, look at how campus is being presented, check under those stairwells for that random furniture that's being stored, and things like that. I think the flip side of this chart is also really interesting in terms of what's important. I spent a lot of my career, I've toured over 250 different college and university campuses all over the country. And for the very long time in the early O's and really in the early teens, everyone built rock climbing walls and lazy rivers in their campus rec facilities. But if you look at the least most important feature is this campus is recreation facilities. So I think again, this moment of filter your messaging through what is students are telling us, and this age group is telling us is what's important to them. They're actually telling us this is not important to me. So I know that your president or your board may want to show off this, like, wow, we made this investment in this rock climbing wall or lazy river, or look at this. But let's think about what students ultimately want, right? They're wanting the campus safety, the cleanliness, the activities, the housing aspect of it. So I think another interesting part about this is that how do we ultimately show this in our marketing material? Inevitably, students want to see themselves there. This is that moment of that reflective moment that I was talking about. 34% of students say day in the life content is what they want to see most. So this isn't just let me go produce one day in the life video, because again, I want to see someone that I can relate to. This is a moment of you need to have into your marketing cadence calendar. We should be producing a day in the life video with different people, people that are of different backgrounds, of different socioeconomic, of different academic programs, and producing this and getting it onto our content and onto our website. So the takeaways for the vibe section, as the official, unofficial vibe person at Carnegie, really take a deep dive and look at what your content shows and make sure it's showing real students and real student life as part of it, right? Replace this idealized message and replace it with the lived experiences. Focus on safety and cleanliness, right? That's what they want. We need to be able to talk about that. And it's not, again, just the physical safety part of it. And I think this moment of like, look at your marketing material, look at your visit, look at what you're doing, and make sure you make belonging visible early in the journey associated with it. And I think the key part about this is if you're doing this in an authentic way, it really becomes who you are as it relates to your brand. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to our brand master, Joe.
And I'm going to casually intercept the handoff because I'm going next to talk about academics.
Just kidding. To Megan, sorry.
All good. I mentioned earlier that yes, vibes is a piece of the puzzle, but so is academics. And academics in our research is actually the #1 deciding factor for the teens who told us they were interested in college. Again, an unsurprising and ever-present factor in the college decision-making process. But what's changed about that? I again found myself a bit surprised. So if we look at the next slide, you can see that the #1 factor that they said was important to them was actually flexibility. The ability to do different things when they wanted to do them and with ease. So not choosing a major right away, having some variety in their process, making it easy to switch majors, taking longer to complete a degree, taking advantage of an internship or a study abroad opportunity when they wanted to. And I actually see this in my own little cousin's college decision journey. She's currently attending a school down south and just completed her sophomore year. She felt very strongly that she wanted to do a study abroad program in her first year, but many programs wouldn't let her. They wouldn't let first-year students participate in the study abroad process because they wanted you to have that first year on campus. And I know that's how my alma mater was. And it makes sense, but the school that she chose allowed her to do her entire first year abroad. That flexibility and leading into real-world readiness was super attractive to her as it is to this generation, which again is a little unexpected considering these students are teens. You'd think that so many of them would be that traditional type of college student who might be wanting to follow what was considered a traditional or structured college completion path. But really, this is just another way of thinking about, can this fit into my life right now? a life where they've had more flexibility and reason to adapt than many generations before them. And then in that second and third most important factor, we have our nod to outcomes and the return on investment in college. They said that real-world readiness and career-aligned pathways were important, meaning students still do care about outcomes and they want exposure to how they'll navigate life in the job market after college. I think the pairing of needing flexibility and preparation for the real world is interesting because the real world they're hoping to be prepared for is increasingly unknown. That flexibility that they're looking for, I think, is in part because they know they need a variety of skills for jobs that may not even exist yet. Providing them the ability to pivot when they need to, when they see what they may need to be ready for, is critical. And we see that in some of the qualitative responses. That third one there I'll call out. A broad, diverse curriculum is generally better for fostering critical thinking and adaptability, skills they know they'll need regardless of the career they enter, while specialized targeted programs often lead to higher immediate job market readiness and higher salaries in technical fields. Proving real-world exposure is clearly a desire, as is the ability to pursue a specific path. But even in those clear path situations, students want that flexibility and what it looks like to get there. And so what do we do with this information? Students are looking for programs that can flex around real life. That includes work schedules, family responsibilities, financial realities, transfer credits, pacing, different levels of academic preparation. Flexibility should be framed in your messaging as a student success strategy rather than a convenience feature. The message is, this experience is designed to help you move forward, even with life changes. Career connection needs to be visible in every program. Students should not have to guess where a major leads or how coursework connects to future opportunities. Make the pathway clear through employer connections, internships, projects, alumni examples, skills gained, even if the line between the program and the career isn't obvious. In fact, I think those stories can be even more compelling. Real-world readiness is especially powerful when it feels specific. So instead of saying, be prepared for the workforce, show what that preparation looks like. Hands-on projects, clinical simulations, portfolio work, industry tools, certifications, client-based learning, career coaching, whatever that looks like for you. Tell those stories, show examples of how prior students have had that success. Uncertainty is part of the student experience right now. Many students are unsure about the economy, job stability, AI, affordability, whether college will pay off. Messaging should acknowledge that uncertainty while showing how you help students build confidence and adaptability. The larger takeaway here is that flexibility and readiness should work together. Students want experiences that fit their lives today and prepare them for the life they're trying to build, even if no one knows what that's going to look like. And this level of messaging is just another example of becoming a brand that students trust and rely on. So now we're going to talk to our brand expert, Joe, about what that looks like here.
Thank you so much, Megan. Let's just stop on this slide. I want to address some things here. Brand opens the door. Authenticity determines whether students walk through it. So in terms of meeting students where they are, brand has this incredible power to be additive and to help regardless of the conversation. It helps simplify decision-making, as in, if I know you, I'm more inclined to feel an emotional connection to you and act. And emotional connection establishes trust, as in, if I experience your storytelling in a way that is focused, aligned, and I can see that it's not platitudinal, but actually authentic, I'm more inclined to trust you. And brand has the power to increase perceived value, which really is reputation. So it opens the door, but it is the degree to which a brand messaging aligns with the reality of its offerings, values, actions that we measure authenticity. Now we can go to the next slide. So brand reputation contributes to decision-making. 87% of students said it was at least slightly important that their education comes from a college with a recognized brand, and 9% of students say brand reputation is the most important factor in choosing a college. Now, this is really important. This is a high-stakes time for students making that college decision. That saying, Sayers' Law, about the stakes being low, it's not true. Not anymore. For high school students, a university's brand reputation is far more than a name and a visual identity or a tagline. And I'm going to get to that, I think, on the next slide. It's a powerful asset. It's an emotional safeguard. And I like to think of reputation as a security blanket. It's a shot in the arm because it offers this instant reassurance. Could you go back, please, to the last slide? Let's stay on here for a second. It reputation is what turns this daunting financial risk into a secure investment in a student's future. And it can guide student decision making when it comes to relevance. A degree from a highly regarded school is a powerful professional endorsement. When it comes to academic quality and real world readiness, so strong institutional reputation reassures our incoming students that your institution's deeply dedicated to all the things Megan just mentioned. It's peer validation, it's immediate social clout amongst your community, and it's about values, alignment, and culture. Students want genuine inclusivity, a welcoming ecosystem with all the vibes that Trent mentioned, where they will feel seen and embraced. So show them who you are and why you exist and help them make that decision. And now we can go to my favorite slide. What I would say to this slide is, I know you're going to download the report, but screenshot this. If you're a manager and or assistant director or a director, show this to your VP. And if you sit on cabinet, this is something that presidents and trustees need to see, and your colleagues do as well. Students use brand to understand the experience. Which parts of a college or university brand do you pay most attention to? See what's at the bottom of this list? Tagline. Everyone wants a tagline. I get asked about taglines every week, but that's why so many of our taglines meet together in the long journey to the middle of the road, because we focus on 3 to 9 words, 3 to 6 words, rather than clearly showing the market who we are and why we make our decisions. See what's at the top of this list here at 37%, about 3 times more than tagline. It's personality. Because in higher ed, we are guilty of doing that thing. And I'm going to get on the soapbox now. We share facts that aren't stories, facts about what we offer and how we offer it. We share facts about our rankings, about our premier faculty and research. We're ranked number 1, 15-to-1 faculty to student ratio, R1, R2. We just got this much money in a one-time gift. This is the equivalent of buying the picture frame with the factory photo inside, sticking it on your wall, and calling it art. The most important part of the sentence, or any sentence about your rankings or your faculty or your research or you name it, is what comes after the number. Rank number 1 because of what? Why? Why should people care? You have the ability to share your institutional personality every time you share any piece of information. And students are telling us, and you see it right here, that they care much more about what motivates a school's behaviors, what drives its decision-making, than they do about facts or mascots or brand colors. So what I would say is brand is a scaffolding. It is an intangible space that lives around all of the bars on all of the charts in this webinar. Students know when they're being marketed to, but they also know when it's authentic, which leads us to the next slide. Authenticity builds trust. And I'll read this one quote. College marketing feels authentic to me when it shows real student experiences instead of just perfect looking photos and slogans. Hearing honest stories from current students or alumni about both the good and challenging parts of campus life makes the information feel more trustworthy. Let's stop here for a second. The currency of branding is trust. And I'll take it a step further. Personified storytelling that leverages your institution's personality to share information, that is what builds trust. Our stories build trust, especially the student stories. That trust builds relationships. Those relationships build reputation, and reputation builds value over time. So we can rely on personality-driven branding more, so our marketing can land more seamlessly with the right audiences. Our brands are competing right now for much more than student attention. They're competing in the personal crucible of human connection. So institutions that show up clearly, honestly, and consistently like actual people do will build stronger connections with students and the communities that shape their decisions. So, next slide. Students are highly sensitive to what feels real. 70% of respondents trust personal connections over institutions. Students notice when a voice feels consistent, when it reflects real experience, and when it sounds authentic, and they will call us out. when we aren't transparent. For those of you who manage social, I don't see you, but I see you. We know from some of our previous research too that students show greater trust in user-generated content and personal sources, so their friends and their family, than in institution-produced content, particularly on social media. These sources feel more credible because they are perceived as unfiltered and honest. This doesn't mean that institutional messaging doesn't matter. Actually, it means it matters more. Students are looking for that alignment between what an institution says and what others are saying about it, and that's reputation, which means it's on us not to bury the messy things because students will see them. You can bet on that. I'm thinking of that adage, brand isn't a promise made, it's a promise kept. So, campus construction, a cancellation, an error, we have the ability to express even the negative things with the same personality that we express the positive things, because that's life. Students want us to be honest, just like they expect their closest friends and their family to be honest. So, let's see if we can tie this all together. Authenticity really is what makes brands believable. So, my question to you, my question to teams across the country is, are you as an institution a reliable narrator? Are you expressing facts or are you telling stories with personality? So, identify not just what you offer and how you offer it, the what's and the hows, but who you are and why you exist. You can also audit consistency across touch points. This is something we often talk about with our partners too. Tracking adoption. If you already have a brand strategy or platform, do you have those measures in place to track adoption? And it can be as simple as saying, how many webinars or seminars have we done internally? If you're a large university with many colleges, how many colleges have adopted the brand? If you're a small institution, how many units have? There's so many measures that you can get to tracking that adoption. Be honest and show trade-offs and not just benefits. And by that, I mean there are going to be things about your institution that aren't for everyone. Don't hide them. Be honest. You can't hide cost. You can't hide the construction on your campus, but you can level with your students and get them at a personal level. Now, next, align messaging with actual experience. And what I mean here is if you're messaging about ROI and outcomes, make sure you're telling stories, not just sharing facts. And now I will kick it back to Trent.
Thanks, Joe. Stories, not stats. That's a key takeaway there. Marketing an institution really is, when we kind of take all of this, is ultimately how do we market it to an institution? And I think one of the things that came out really loud and clear in the surveys that we did with this 13 to 18-year-old group, especially, was really, what do they want? And they really want marketing that understands who they are. So if we can go on to the next slide, right? 71% of students said that they want marketing to get them, and 69% say that it's at least somewhat important that it feels personalized. So really, when I think about and reflect on this moment, is like, as consumers, all of us have gotten used to very personalized marketing, right? And I think we've gotten used to personalized marketing because personalization lives in everything that we do on a daily basis. And so I'm going to take one brand outside of higher education that many people oftentimes talk about when it comes to personalization, and that's Starbucks, right? If you think about the Starbucks menu, Starbucks actually has over 170,000 drink options on its menu when you think about how you can ultimately personalize that, right? So as a consumer, we crave personalization in what we're doing. Now, Starbucks actually has taken this a level further. And so when Starbucks sends out a marketing message, when they send out one marketing message, they create variable content associated with that. Starbucks creates over 400,000 variations of a single marketing message. They know when you like your drink. They know how you like your drink. They know what you regularly drink. They know what you regularly order with it. They know all of this data that they're sitting on about you as a consumer. But if we bring that to higher education and we think about it, higher education at its core is one of the most transformative and personalized experiences that an individual will have likely in their entire life. Let me say that again. Higher education is one of the most transformative, personalized experiences that an individual will have in their entire life. If you think about it, there's different modalities, there's different class schedules, activities, meal plans. There are no two students on any of your all's campus that are having the same experience. They're having this personalized experience. But we then go to market to them, and we market to them like they're a mass, and we market to them like they're one giant group. Or we sit there and say, okay, let's actually divide them in half, and let's do by gender, or let's divide by socioeconomics, or let's divide by major or academic program. But in reality, what students ultimately want is they want this personalization. They told us as such. One of the students said, when it feels like they took the time to get to know me instead of receiving the same generic message that everyone else got, that's when it's relevant to them. That's when it's important to them. All of us in 2026 are sitting on a treasure trove of data within our CRMs. Whether that's Slate or Salesforce or another CRM, we are sitting on a whole bunch of data. I understand that segmentation and personalization is really complicated. I get it. I help clients with it all the time. But I think at the end of the day, we have to figure out how can we get away from the mass of sending one version of an email or two versions of an email, and how do we ultimately think about populations? How do we think about moments based on what a student's doing along the way? And how do we ultimately communicate to a student individualized that represents that transformative, personalized experience that they're going to have on your campuses? Okay, so when we think about the takeaways of this moment, it is align the message to the concerns of the student, right? So let's figure out what their concerns are. We know from the data what some of their concerns are. Let's ask them what their concerns are. Let's try to use the data that we have in order to do that. We need to ultimately be clear about it, and we need to provide content that helps alleviate those concerns. We have to leverage our CRM, and we have to leverage the data that we collect. So after you talk to a student, after you fill out that, after that student has that conversation with you, it's not just great. That conversation lives in your head. Let's go and figure out a way to capture that in our CRM and utilize that in future conversations. And then inevitably, we have to deliver the right message at the right moment to the student. So let's look at their behaviors. It's really important to recognize the fact that students are no longer on a linear journey anymore with regards to their college search. And I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Jamie, who's going to talk about that non-linear path and what's happening with today's students.
Thanks, Trent. I feel like we've covered the messaging, the motive, kind of the inner thoughts of these prospective students, but where do we reach them? What are the channels that make the most sense? How are they engaging with these different channels? Because that has evolved significantly over the last couple of years. So this is a question that we have asked pretty consistently in all of our research reports when we're thinking about prospective undergraduate students. And what I find fascinating is when we're asking what digital resources are you using to start your college search process, for years it was Google search engine or search engine and college website. You can see very distinctly how this has evolved with the introduction of AI, with the introduction of different types of mediums in terms of social media. You have search engine as number one still, but then you also have college ranking website, which we know is regularly pulled from AI in terms of reference points. You have social media, and then you have college website. What I find so distinct about this is actually a comment that my colleague Voltaire has made about the website, how the website is no longer where we're going to find information. It's where we're going to authenticate that information, to validate that information, to understand the feel of the institution now that we've kind of gotten a sense of the type of information that we're looking for. So that evolution I find critical and important for us to think about where we're showing up for prospective students. From the lens of social media, there is a little bit of an evolution here, but nothing that is majorly surprising. But what I found fascinating with this study, which is new, is that 19% of students said they would actually begin their search in social media. That has not been the case with previous research that we've done. It's a place that students are now going to more often. And in just looking at the apps that you're most using on a most regular basis, the top 3 are all video. Top 4 are all video tools, right? Students are looking to see themselves at the institution, see themselves in the experience, and to connect on a more authentic level through different video attributes. So found that really fascinating. We also, which we were pressure testing a little bit because we wanted to make sure this was actually true. That's how interesting it was to us, is that 2/3 of prospects we surveyed would be at least somewhat comfortable with the school reaching out to them in social media. I questioned that because I myself wouldn't really want a brand engaging with me, but then I thought about the fact that that's where they're spending their time. That's where they want to engage on a more personal level. And so, of course, they're going to have a higher level of comfort with engaging with brands and individuals in their social channels. So I found that really fascinating. But fear not, email is not dead. It's still heavily used by prospective students. 78% of teens said they check their email at least monthly, which I would love to do that. I wish we could go back to those days. And 35% said they check it at least daily. So still very heavily engaged. A couple things with email that are important for us to think about is it's still a very formal channel. So students trust the information coming in email. It's a place for them to easily search for information if you're sending specific information about dates or visit procedures or financial aid. So still just a critical piece plugged into that overall conflow for prospective students. And then AI is emerging as that new layer of discovery. So we talked about kind of the introduction of ranking sites and AI in the tool that's used for that first introduction to searching for prospective schools and prospective students. So we wanted to go a layer deeper to understand the tools that are actually being used. At the time of the survey, ChatGPT was front runner for sure, at about almost 60% being leveraged, with Gemini closely behind it. And then we have kind of Copilot like Grok, et cetera. This is going to continue to evolve as new tools are being introduced, and it's kind of that rat race of AI, but just really fascinating that almost 60% were even using it at all in their college search process at the time of the survey. And then 49% of students said that they read the AI-generated summaries before exploring search results. So there's almost like this evolution of wanting to kind of get the gist of the information before diving deeper, and leaning on AI to provide that at any point that they can. So what's in summary for this section in terms of the channels that prospective students are using? First and foremost, designing for multiple entry points. So we saw AI, we saw Google search, we saw ranking sites, we saw social media. All of these are critical for different points of the journey in terms of what students are looking for and how they're engaging. It also provides kind of that connective tissue of the overarching story. So I think Joe used the word that trust is the currency for brand. That's how you start to build that trust, is that consistency of message. So consistency across all channels also very critical, making sure that you're portraying that story across the board, regardless of the channel that the student is engaging with. Thinking beyond those own channels, this one's probably most critical now with the introduction of AI and how AI is leaning into sites that aren't your own site, ranking sites, video, news releases, etc. They're pulling all of these different pieces of information in the results for students. And so as students are leaning more heavily into that as their first entry point in Google search, it's becoming more and more critical that we're showing up there and understanding how we're showing up there. And then, of course, brand personality matters here most. As we think about consistency of messaging and building trust, personality is the unlock for that. Showcasing and understanding what your personality is for your institution is also critical there. So with that, we did want to leave a couple minutes here for Q&A, and we are actually pacing perfectly, which is great. A couple things just to note on the front end. So that QR code at the beginning of this deck, which again we'll share with you all afterwards, is a way to access this full report. I think it was dropped in the chat a couple times as well. We have not yet dropped the report for the students that are not choosing a college or deciding not to pursue college. So once that's ready, we're actually going to be sending it to the full list of attendees on this webinar, but then of course will be on our website to access as well. There was also a question about if that 51 to 49% metric, if that compares to past research. We actually don't have a strong comparison of the two research studies because we opened up our research to more depth this year. We were able to access 13 to 16-year-olds for the first time ever in this survey report. So there's not a true apples to apples to past research. But in our research of other research, we were able to see that it's up about 10% year over year in terms of students that said they weren't interested in college. So we are seeing a little bit of a shift there that we want to further dig into, which is why we're going to be releasing that separate study. And then there was one question about, does this hold true for grad? There are probably a lot of similarities to the messaging preferences here. I think lines are getting more and more blurred between what I would say is traditional, non-traditional grad students. But this research was specifically focused on that undergraduate student. So just kind of take that with a grain of salt. So one question that I did want to pass over to Megan, and probably with some assist from Joe, is a question from the group that said, I'd be curious to dig into what challenging parts of campus life resonate positively and which ultimately turn students off. In other words, we don't want to air all of our dirty laundry to feel authentic, but is there a needle to thread that reveals the right kind of dirty laundry?
Yeah, I love this question. Joe and I were actually talking about this yesterday in prep for today. We were talking a lot about the parts of maybe campus or the experience that you don't feel like you should put front and center in your messaging. And the way that Joe and I were talking about it was, but some of those things are actually going to resonate with certain students. And so it's about embracing the parts that maybe don't feel as attractive to everyone, but will feel attractive to the right student to attend. So for example, Caitlin on the team who's actually chatting with you all, she shared a story about how she visited a campus that had a forest in the middle of campus, and that was one of her biggest turnoffs because she was really scared by the forest. The college I attended, which may give it away, had 700 acres of forest. And so I was very much excited to go to a campus with a lot of forestry. And so while one campus may not want to lead with that information because they don't want students who are afraid of the forest to not want to go there, that could have been the very thing that got me to their campus. So it's all about embracing the parts that are authentic to the campus experience because the students who will be drawn to that will be excited by the fact that you're leading with those things, or maybe not leading with them, but not being shy about them. I don't know, Joe, did I phrase that the way that we were talking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'll add is that you can't hide when things go wrong either. But if your brand personality includes, like, say, being supportive, assertive, forward thinking, think about how you can share a message about an error or a message about something that can be a downer in an issue in a way that leads itself at least into part of your core personality. So if your tone is assertive and supportive and forward thinking, that means that personality needs to come through both with the feel good stuff and with the downers. So instead, what do we often do? We share the negative, and I'm speaking in like really broad strokes here, in the most dry press release kind of way. We need to leverage every message, and it all needs to level back to who we are and why we exist as an institution.
And I think we have to be okay that in that messaging, if we embrace those pieces, that we won't be right for everyone, but we'll definitely be right for the people who we're right for. And that has to be okay because that's honest and that's authentic.
That builds trust.
Love it. Trent, I'd love to pass this question to you. So one of the questions was, when are they assessing campus feel? You've done a lot of tours, a lot of visits. What is that moment that they're starting to assess that, and how can we think about that?
I think students are assessing campus feel from the get-go. I think oftentimes we think about this moment of like campus feel. Yes, the big part of that is during a campus visit, but I also think they're starting to assess campus feel as they're putting together their beginning parts of their list, as they're looking through the view book or the print piece that lands at their household or that email or the social media ad. Like students are immediately looking at this moment of what is the feel, what is the vibe of the place. I mean, how many of you all have gone to a new city and or you've gone to a new restaurant that's come to town and you go online and you start like clicking through the pictures and be like, oh, I don't like the vibe of this place. I know I'm not going to like it. Or, oh, wow, this place has a cool cool vibe and pictures, I bet you the food's good, right? Because there's this moment we all have where like that's how we filter it. So it's no different for a student looking at a college, right? They're going and looking at the imagery that Jamie talked about in terms of where they're driving, where they're actually consuming media, and they're looking at those places. They're looking at the communications you're putting out. And so all of it has to be the authenticity of your brand and the authenticity of the vibe that is on campus all the way through. And so oftentimes it's this moment where your online, your in print, and your in person needs to be in sync. Bye, bye, bye. Sorry. Right. And I don't mean the millennial boy band, right? It has to be in sync associated with this work. So
Oh my gosh, I love the reference, Millennial Boy Band. Joe, you referenced this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could expand upon what does overall personality encompass? I think there was a graph that we showed that personality was the number one factor for prospective students, but what does that include?
So I think that the question was, would you reconsider that overall personality encompasses all those factors below it in the chart plus more? Yes. So what I'd say is logos, colors, design aesthetic, taglines absolutely can be vessels that convey institutional personality. So you can see it like that. But I'm going to venture that personality, usually, again, broad strokes, is 3 to 6 words in a brand strategy as one of many frameworks. Um, and the way that I see brand strategy and the way that we see brand strategy here at Carnegie is that personality is the strategy. So my question is, are your brand assets aligned and consistently expressing your institutional personality, or has it been an exercise in retrofitting personality to adhere to those assets that already exist, which we do often see? So personality is a vessel for alignment. So yes, they all can work in lockstep for each other. That's the dream, right, for all of our institutions.
It's great. I did want to mention this is in the chat if you all are following around on the feed. We do have a research study for graduate and online older audiences on our website on Online Learner Report if you want to dig into the motivations of those students as well. One other question that came in that's kind of a unique one, but I'm curious this group's take. Are there any favorite student focus group questions to better understand institutional specific data for the info covered today? So what would we recommend asking students if we're there looking to dig in for their own specific campuses?
I'm sure we all have ideas. Joe, I know you've done a number of these focus groups. I don't know if anything comes to mind. I know I would want them to explain like what's the campus vibe to you? Like, how would you describe our institution to your friends when you go home? Like, how do you talk about it? How do you talk about what you do? How do you talk about how you feel here? How do you talk about whether you feel like you belong? Like, what is our campus to you? I don't know,
And
Joe, how would you frame it?
I have so I've got a bag of tricks I like to pull out with students. One of the questions is this: your college or university is a movie. I want you to tell me who the hero is, who the villain is, and what studio made it. Is this a Wes Anderson film? Is it totally twee? Is it A24? Tell me why. And you'd be surprised at the answers that we get out of that. I also like to ask, your college or university, is it an authentic human being, a walking, talking, breathing human being? Tell me about this person and leave it a little open-ended. And the qualitative answers that you get back are incredible.
I mean, I love asking a student, right? I mean, what is your favorite place or space on campus? Right. I think oftentimes we think, and I think I can think about that campus rec moment. Oftentimes we think about these like, oh, this building or this, and these are the things that we need to make sure we showcase, and those are important. But I bet most students are going to tell you like the random shady spot under the tree where they hang out with their friends, or the room, or something along those lines. So I think that's an important thing. I think the other piece that I do want to address because it got mentioned in the chat is about this term vibe, and because I think that's ultimately what I talk a lot about is, we actually didn't choose the word vibe. The students resoundingly said vibe. And so if there's a concern of like, how am I going to go to my campus leadership with the word vibe? Like the research and the students, like this is what they're saying is it's about the vibe. And so we have to be comfortable in that moment of what is the vibe of campus and what is the heartbeat of campus and how are how are students perceiving who we are as an institution all the way through. So
Thank you. Thank you. If we didn't get any questions, we will respond to them. And if there's enough there, we might even do an FAQ on our page. So we'll get back to you all on that. But wanted to leave you with a slide that's kind of a nice kind of picture capture of a summary of the things that we talked about, of how to leverage these kind of core findings in what you're producing day in, day out, and the decisions that you're making as a marketer or an enrollment officer, and use it as a cheat sheet for the work that you're doing. It's also nice to bring back to the team and workshop some of the content that we went through today. And then on the next page, we actually have the same QR code from earlier to download this report if you want to read it in full. And of course, you are more than welcome to reach out to any of us here or on our website if you want to engage in conversation and learn more about the work that we do and how we are activating this work in our conversations with our many partners. But thank you so much for being here today.
thank you all.